Hello and good morning. I'm Teresa from Scrap Journal Art, and welcome to class number 13 of our 2025 Winter NSD. So today we will be creating a junk journal, and I really hope that you will enjoy the class, and I can't wait to see all your creations. So I'm going to go through the journal first, do a flip through, so that you can see what we are working towards, and then we can start on the process. So the journal is a bit of a mix between a junk journal, a mini album, and scrapbook pages. I used a junk journal style, which I love. I love making junk journals, but I like the interactive elements that you find in a mini album. So I included some interactive elements, and I've got 3 pages with clusters that I normally use when I make scrapbook pages. For you that know my style, you know that I love creating clusters on my pages. So I used that style in the book as well. So it's a bit of a mix between a junk journal, mini album, and scrapbooking. My journal size is 13 centimeters by 21.5 centimeters. And it's this size because I used an old book cover for the cover of this journal. So if you have any old books that's falling apart and you can use the covers, do that. And that will dictate how big your journal and your pages will be. So you can really make this journal any size you want. So I've got the 2 covers. It was a book with cream covers, so I left the cream as is. And I collaged some of the pattern paper on top, so the paper won't peel off and get damaged when you handle the book. So the front page and the back page is collaged with some gel medium to protect the paper. We've got the 2 covers, the back and front cover, and they're connected with a fabric spine. And you will see the fabric spine is not connected to the pages. If you do it this way, then your pages will open flat. I only have 4 pages in the book. You'll see in the video I worked at first with 3 pages, but at a later stage I added another page as I had a lot of photos that I wanted to include in the journal, and I think I used about 17 photos in the journal. So there you will see the 4 pages, and they each have a gusset like you normally do with a mini album, so that there is space to add some bulk in between the pages. Our first page is this little book and flip. It opens like so. So I added a magnet there and a magnet underneath these papers, so that when you close this, it keeps the little page closed. It won't flip open when you handle your journal. Underneath this, we've got a slide out. So here you'll see a cluster with some fabrics and papers and trim. I sewed everything together, but you really do not have to do any sewing in the journal. You can just glue everything together. I like sewing. I like combining. I think that's my big love of junk journals, is that I like combining fabric and paper with sewing. And I just love the texture it gives, and it gives that kind of shabby vintage look to my journals. This page is an waterfall, and it opens like so. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 photos on the waterfall. The paperback that I used is from Bella, and it's called Majestic Dream. And the colors of the paperback and the colors of the backdrop just matched very well together. To tone it down, I used some papers from my stash, some neutral papers like the back page here. This one as well, the pink, is also from my stash, just to tone down all the colorful elements. And of course, the neutral papers make all your colors pop more. The second page, this is a little notepad. So I love making these notepads. Every journal that I make has a notepad like this. The purpose of it is to add some scraps of paper, and then if you want to journal in the book, you can just tear paper out or page out and then write on it. But my notepads are purely for decorative purposes. I just love using all the little scraps, leftover scraps, and add a little flip up notepad. and I decorate it with some die cuts. You can also put photos on here, so you can definitely add photos in your notepad as well. So it slides into, there's a slit in the page where it slides into. This is a hidden paper clip. And if you don't want to do a slit in your page, you can just basically slide it over the top of your page and it can sit there. So it can either be as a page topper or you can slide it into the page like so. This is a door. Again, I used magnets, one underneath the butterfly and one underneath the heart to keep it closed. And this is one of my clusters that I normally do on my scrapbook pages, where I added one of my favorite photos with the 5 of us together. I just love them to bits. The third page is a flip, or flaps that flip. So it opens like so. And then I have another fabric cluster here. And there's some layering of pattern paper. And I sewed around some of the elements and around the photo as well. I also sewed around these flaps, and it gives that, I left the thread, so it gives that kind of grungy, shabby look, which I completely love in my journals. These are tags. So I don't know, some of you might recognize some of these brads. They are extremely old, like many, many years old, and I can use them in this journal. It just works perfect with the coloring. So there's one tag with a little quote. And then there's 3 tags with pictures. The pocket I made with vellum, so it is a little bit flimsy. I don't mind it tearing. It just goes with the look of the book. But you can make it with some pattern paper if you don't have vellum or tracing paper. I use the thicker tracing paper in my journals. I made little tabs for my book jewelry, little dangles. So this page is a little accordion pocket. I made the pocket pages with vellum as well, but you can use normal pattern paper for this. And in the pockets, each pocket has a tag in it with some photos on. I also did some layering and sewing on the little tags. And then this last page is just a flip with another of the clusters. And here's some of the leftover pattern papers and little quotes and sayings from our stash. We'll get on with the process now. I really hope you enjoy it, and I can't wait to see your creations. Have a good day and happy journaling. I grabbed a couple of things that I thought might be nice to use in the journal. My main inspiration for this journal is this paper from Chowbala, and it's called Majestic Dream. I have this very old book, secondhand book from a bookstore, and I want to use the covers as the cover for my journal. If you don't have an old book, what you can do is use a chipboard or very thick cardstock, and you can decide how big you want your journal, cut your chipboard, and then perhaps cover it with some of the paper. But in my case, I actually want to decoupage a picture on top of this, and I want to do some layering with fabrics to create a kind of a grungy little journal. So I've got some laces and decorative trims, some sari silk ribbon. So I do like to use this canvas fabric, which is a very thick, nice, sturdy fabric to use for your journals. And this also you can use to cover either your chipboard or old book cover. And you can build your cover on top of this. To do a spine, we need a little piece of fabric. So any fabric that might work with your paper. And then glue. This is the glue I absolutely love. It's magic glue. To do the collage on the front page, we'll need some collage medium or matte gel medium. That will work as well. I have this Stamperia collage glue. I love Tim Holtz's Distress Collage medium. This works very well. Any kind of regular gel matte medium will also work to protect the cover. We will start off by creating the base of the journal. So I measured my cover, and my cover measures 13 centimeter by 21.5 centimeter. So our base pages will then be 27 centimeters wide and 21.5 centimeters high. And then you will score at 13 centimeter and at 14 centimeter. And that will give you your first page. You can now decide how many pages you want in your journal. I used 4 pages in my journal. You can now glue the pages back to back to create the base of your journal. You can use double-sided tape for this or liquid glue. I do prefer liquid glue as it gives me that open time to align my pages exactly. To create your covers, you will need 2 pieces of pattern paper, just a tiny bit smaller in size than your cover of the journal. Unfortunately, my video stopped recording at this stage, but a while back I made a similar cover for a smaller journal, and I'm going to insert the process of making that cover here so that you can see the process of making these covers. I started off using the Distress Collage medium, but I found that my bottle was kind of empty, so I decided to glue down the paper first with the golden collage medium, but it was very thick, so it was a bit difficult to work with. But I stuck down the paper with that and then used the Distress Collage medium to cover on the outside. Remember, when you use collage medium, to apply the medium to your cover and to the back of your paper for it to stick well. If you don't cover it well enough, you will have bubbles underneath your paper. Make sure that you apply enough glue on your cover and on the back of the paper. To minimize the brush marks on your paper, you can use anything with a flat edge to lightly go over your medium when you're done with your brush, and that will help to cover up all the brush marks. When you use the brush, remember to use it in a crisscross pattern, up and down and side to side, and that will also help to smooth out your medium on your cover. When my covers were dry, I laid pieces of fabric and a coffee stained envelope to create the back of the covers. I started with the first interactive element, which is the page with the doors. So the size of your paper is 30 centimeters wide by 21.5 centimeters wide. and you will score at 7 centimeter, 8 centimeter, 21 centimeters, and 22 centimeters. To create a closure for the doors, I created a double layer underneath the butterfly. I fuzzy cut the butterfly, and that was the closure. I glued down a small magnet underneath the body of the butterfly, and on the other door, I fuzzy cut a little heart, and the other magnet was placed under the heart as a closure for the door. On the page next to the door, I created a slit at the top of the page, and this is where the little notepad will slide in. The length of the slit is around about 10 centimeters. I first punched two holes and then cut the slits between the two holes. It will help for the slit not to tear, and it makes it easier, gives that extra little space in the corners for the notepad to slide in. To create the little notepad, I took a couple of different textured papers and some pattern paper as well. I stapled them together at the top. I stacked them and teared them in different layers, and then I decorated the top part of the little notepad. I added some die cuts and fuzzy cut elements to decorate the pages. Next up, I made the little accordion folder with the little vellum pockets. I used tracing paper to make the little pockets, so you can fold each page in half, so you'll get two pockets out of each page. The sizes of your tracing paper is more or less 21 centimeters in width and 12 centimeters height. Fold your page, a little page at 9 centimeters and 18 centimeters, and that will leave you more or less 3 centimeters on the side, which you will fold over. And at the bottom, you fold around about 1 centimeter. Make sure that all three of your pockets are exactly the same width and height. Oh, and I just checked, I used 4 of these pockets, not 3. Cut the little corners of the small 1 centimeter fold, and then cut the excess off on the sides and leave the center part intact. That you will fold over, and this will create your pocket. I use liquid glue to glue the little pockets. It is easier and faster than double-sided tape, and if it wrinkles the paper a little bit, it doesn't matter, because you will not be able to see it behind the cover of the accordion pocket. You can now cut 4 tags to fit into your pockets. I cut a front cover for the pockets, just a tiny bit bigger than the pocket itself, and I added a little metal embellishment on the cover. I also decorated it with a quote and a butterfly at a later stage. To attach the pockets to each other and the cover, you need to add a strip of double-sided tape down the middle of each pocket. Make sure that you do it exactly in the middle at the same place on each pocket and on the cover. You can now attach them to each other and that will create your accordion. For the next page element, you'll need, excuse me, you'll need a strip 30 centimeters high by 13 centimeters wide. And then you can score on each side at 1.5 centimeters. You will then take the strip and tear it in half. So what I did was I took these two flaps to my machine and I sewed around it a couple of rows because I decided I want to do a bit of sewing in this book. You really do not have to do any sewing, but I decided that I want a little bit of a shabby chic or grunge effect. So next to this page, we will create a vellum pocket. The size of the pattern paper behind the vellum pocket is 12 centimeters wide and 12 centimeters high. So it's a 12 by 12 square. The vellum is 13 centimeter high by 14 centimeter width. So you'll have a centimeter on the sides and at the bottom to fold over the pattern paper and that will form your pocket. I cut a half moon on the top of the vellum and ink the edges. Then you can take the vellum and fold it over the pattern paper and glue it down. The pattern paper had the word home on it, and that didn't really fit in with the theme of my journal. So I decided to do some layering of fabric and elements and glue it over this word. That cluster and the cluster on the vellum pocket was sewn on my machine. So you can glue all your elements down, but I took it to my machine and I sewed around all the elements in the little clusters. I had a frame and I added some dimension by putting foam tape behind it, and that I glued down underneath the cluster. I also stuck the two pieces down over the page. On the other side, you do see the two strips, but we do have that large element with the doors that we will be gluing to the other side, and that will hide the strips that shows on the other side. I made 3 tags for this pocket, and 2 of them I had templates with a pattern on top. So I just cut the pattern paper from the template, and that just gave an interesting look to my tags. Since I started with the sewing on the 2 flaps, I decided I wanted to do some sewing on some of the other elements as well. So yeah, I just ripped off the front of the accordion pockets, and I sewed around it and glued it back on. This is now where I glued down the door element on the page, and it hides the 2 strips top and bottom. I want to make a hidden paper clip for the little notepad that we made right in the beginning. You will need a strip of paper 30 centimeters long and about 10 centimeters wide. Make sure that the pattern that you want showing faces you. You will then fold it over to the front about 8 centimeters. Insert your paper clips and fold back up over the paper clips. You can glue that down, and then you bring the long side up and over and also glue it on that shorter piece. So that shorter piece is then where we will glue this hidden paper clip to the notepad. This hidden paper clip tab will then slide into that slit that we made into the base page in the beginning when we created our journal. We will now create a waterfall for one of our pages. So you will need the following pieces. First of all, 3 pieces that is 12 centimeters by 12 centimeters, and then 1 piece that is 12 centimeters wide by 8 centimeters high, and then a long piece also 12 centimeters wide, but I think you can use the full 30 centimeters. You can always cut the excess off when you're done. You will score the long piece at 10 centimeters from the top, and that will be folded over to the front. The shorter pieces, the squares, you need to score 2 centimeters on the top of each square. So first of all, you'll take your first piece and glue it next to the score line of the long piece. The score piece of the next square must be glued down on the top of the first flap at the score line. You can insert your next square as well. In the video, I only had the two, and I only added a third one later. But if you add it now, what's done is done. When you've done all three, then you've got the small piece that's 8 centimeter high. You'll glue that down the same way as the rest. That small piece is what we're gonna glue down on the slide to make the whole element slide up and down. This part is not necessary, but I decided to add a different pattern paper on the bottom strip, and then you need to take any strip of paper that is left over, as long as it's long enough to fold over the bottom strip and have some space to overlap. When you do the fold, do not fold it around that part too tightly, as this strip needs to be able to slide up and down. So leave a little gap on either side for the strip to move easy up and down. You can then move the strip right to the top, the furthest that it can go, and then you glue that small flap down on top of this slide. Just give it a little bit of time to dry, and then you'll see your slide is working. The next two pieces are very easy. You will only need two pieces of pattern paper. The one is a square 17 centimeter by 17 centimeter, and the smaller one is 11 centimeter wide and 15 centimeters high, and that one you can fold in half. This 17 by 17 square, you need to score on the left hand side at 6 centimeters. I added a piece of pattern paper to the top of my small booklet, as the back of my paper wasn't so nice. If you have a nice pattern paper, this is not necessary for you. The last part of this video is where I put everything together. I did fast forward the process to cut out a lot of the unnecessary faffing and waiting time in between all the gluing and layering. So the first part that I started on was the photo cluster inside the door page. So I layered a couple of pattern papers and I raised them with some foam tape to add dimension, and I added quite a lot of fuzzy cut elements and die cuts. I decided to add these cute little dragonflies, which I embossed first, and then I added some bling to the little cluster as well. I do apologize for all these light flashes. I don't know what happened in the beginning of the video. It kept on giving those horrible light flashes. I then started on the first page of the book. I glued down the folds on the left hand side, did a bit of layering as well, and added some die cuts. I also added the magnet underneath that red poppy, and that kept the little book from falling open when you page through the journal. I also added a little tab on that little page. When you add the waterfall to the page, you only glue the slider down on the page. The rest of the waterfall then move through the slider. Next, I added some lace to the outside hinges of the door page. And I also added some trim on the page where we add the notebook. Just remember when you glue down the trim that you need to cut open the piece that overlaps on the slit so that your notebook can slide in smoothly. I decided to add white splatters to the cluster inside the door page. I added some of that lace trim on the other side of the hinge of the door as well. On the next page where we have those two flaps, I glued some trim as well and then layered some pattern paper. I also added some sewing on this page around the photo and the fabric cluster as well. I added photos to the 4 tags and embellished it with a bit of fabric and some words and die cuts. I added a frame and some words on this page before I glued down the accordion pocket. I also added a butterfly and some words on the front of the accordion pocket. On the next page, I made a fold with some pattern paper, which I glued to the back side of the page. And then I started on the cluster by layering some die cuts and a cardstock. I did not add any dimension to this, as the accordion pocket on the left hand side already adds some bulk to this page. On the flap, I added some offcut papers and words and a quote. The final steps now is to complete the front and back page and add that to the journal. So on the front page, I decided to add some more layering. These layers are also protected with some collage medium. Finally, I added some metal embellishments to that layer, as well as some chipboard to strengthen the paper. I then glued the cover to the envelope, but decided to glue the cover to the book before I add the last layer on top of the front page. It's time now to add the spine. So I layered 2 pieces of fabric on top of each other, and then I glued it to the front and back side of the base pages. Make sure not to glue the fabric spine to the hinges of the pages. I then added the front and back covers to the base pages, and I added enough glue to strengthen the bond between the cover and the base pages. Finally, I added the top layer of the front page, and I made sure that I add enough glue to this as well. I added a spine dangle to the journal, and that completed the whole process.